After finishing high school, I went on a camping trip with my friends, John, Rick, Daniel, and me. We drove out to a forest about 2 hours away from where we lived. We arrived and set up our tents. We started drinking almost immediately while we built a fire. Night came fast, and before we knew it, the forest was completely black, only lit by our fire from his tent. He came back with a rifle. It surprised us all, as we didn't think any of us would bring a gun. He was noticeably drunk at this point and told us all that we should go hunting. We all laughed at how drunk he was and told him we weren't going anywhere from camp. We sat around for a little while longer and decided to go to our tents. We were all in separate tents in a line of 4. I was on the left, and then Daniel, then John, and Rick was on the last one. At this point it was around 2 a.m. and our fire was starting to die out. This meant that the area surrounding us was completely dark. I drifted off to sleep from what felt like only 5 minutes later. I heard footsteps breaking leaves coming up from behind my tent. My tent has tiny windows that allow me to look outside through the fly screen. This meant that in the dark, I couldn't be seen inside, but I could look out and see a little bit from what was left of the fire's light. I saw nothing, but as I lay back down, I heard the leaves crunching again behind my tent. I think being drunk and tired caused me to brush it off as trees moving or a small animal maybe walking around. I lay back in my tent and stayed there until I fell back into sleep. I woke up to a loud gunshot. I poked my head out of the door to my tent and saw John and Daniel half asleep looking around too. We were all in shock as we started whispering to each other. The sound pierced my ears, deafening everything around us, the gun sounding closer than the previous shot before. I checked my phone for reception to call 911. Luckily I had 1 bar, but my battery was low. I managed to call the police and whispered to them the situation. The lady on the phone said they would send an officer out there and it would take about 20 minutes. This time the sound of the rifle making its way through the phone alerted the officer of the danger we were truly in. Time felt like it became frozen, and I lay in my tent until what seemed like only minutes later, a loud police siren came through to us, waking up the entire forest. An officer got out of the car and asked us to leave our tents. We came out visibly shaken from the sounds around us and through the blinding light being shined into our eyes. We heard the officer say, "You in the last tent, come outside right now." We turned to look and noticed Rick's tent was lifeless. There was no sign of anyone in there. The officer told us to stay still as he walked over to Rick's tent. He opened it up and looked inside. He asked us if we knew where Rick had gone. We didn't even know Rick had gone, so we said no. As we said that, we heard someone walking from the darkness ahead of us. The officer called out and shined his torch demanding for a response. The footsteps stopped, and the officer walked towards the area they came from. We waited for something to come out of the silence. Then the officer yelled, "Put the gun down." He approached what seemed like a person and handcuffed. After walking towards us, we all looked to see Rick wrestling the officer while he was put in the car. We didn't want to stay there after this had happened, so we asked the officer if he could arrange someone to drive us back to town. We were taken back to town and were made to give our statement of what we remember. After explaining what I knew, the man I spoke with let me know that Rick had mistakenly killed someone. He went out hunting after we went to sleep and saw what he thought was a small bear. It turned out those crunching sounds I heard were the footsteps of Rick right before he was about to go out. I never heard from Rick again, and from what the police told me, he's going to be in prison for a very long time. I sometimes think about that night and how if I had gone out when I heard the footsteps, that maybe I could have stopped him from going. I've never been camping since.